This is Goku-san, DBZ, and instead of doing top 12 DC villains like I was going to originally, I'm doing a special top 20 list, not top 12. And I will be listing my top 20 personal favorite comic book movies that have been out thus far. Of course, as always, there will be some honorable mentions, some dishonorable mentions. Now keep in mind, of course, this will be my personal picks. So, some of them people may hate, some of them people may like, and maybe some missing here and there that I may have just not watched. So, keep that in mind. As you can tell in the background right now, I'm rearranging some of my posters, obviously. And I moved out of the way of Star Wars. Now I have Guardians of the Galaxy. Up here is a poster for, of course, the new expansion to Final Fantasy XIV. And here I'll be putting up a special world map picture of the world of Final Fantasy XII. So that's what I'm doing right now with the backgrounds. And I'll get ready to get this start. Oh yeah, and of course, right now I'm wearing one of my favorite animes, shirt-wise, and that is Rurouni Kenshin. And anyways, let's get this vlog started. But today, I will be listing honorable and dishonorable mentions before the actual countdown starts. And instead of, right before revealing number 1. And also, it will be limited to no more than 2 movies per franchise, though, on my top 20 list. So, honorable mentions first. Though some people may not have liked it. Honorable mentions: Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, Watchmen, The Punisher, Avengers Age of Ultron, Blade 2, The Dark Knight, and also, of course, Batman from Tim Burton, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 2, the original X-Men, The Wolverine, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, dishonorable mentions: Superman 3 and 4, Man of Steel, X3, X-Men United, Fantastic Four: The New One, Howard the Duck, Iron Man 2, Ghost Rider 2, Spirit of Vengeance, The Hulk. And now, here it is. Top 20, in my view, my personal favorite comic book movies. Coming in at number 20 is a movie that some people, or a lot of people, don't like, or hipsters don't like, just because hipster culture tells them not to like it. And yes, I'm a nerd, but I'm not one of the hipsters. So, just putting that out there. And number 20 stars Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern. Yep, number 20 favorite comic book movie is the Green Lantern live-action movie. And unlike a lot of people, I actually, there was flaws about, like, the evil Cloud. I would have preferred from the beginning Sinestro, which of course started out as, like, the head, I guess you could say, of the Green Lantern Corps. Now, with the movie, to be fair, I thought Ryan Reynolds did a really good job in the movie, honestly. I felt like he was probably one of the best parts of the movie. I think in some areas they went a little on the CG stuff, yeah. And Ryan Reynolds could have been a little more creative on what he chose weaponry-wise, since he could imagine anything with the Green Power Ring. And the giant head like scientist guy, I thought was kind of stupid. That's probably my biggest complaint, is the big scary Cloud and that scientist. But the guy who becomes Sinestro and stuff, I actually liked who they casted playing Sinestro. Now, my main pet peeve with the movie, frankly, is, other than that stuff, really is mainly just, I would have liked to have seen more of, like, Ryan Reynolds' character, Green Lantern, being trained at the Lantern Corps, learning how to use the power ring and stuff. Because total movie, out of the, like, 2-hour movie, he was there for only maybe 20-25 minutes or so of the movie. See, I would have actually preferred they had spent at least, like, half the movie, at least an hour there, and got to see a little bit more of the Green Lantern Corps, like a place where they train and stuff, and learning more about the Corps itself. More origin story of that. But yeah, unlike a lot of people, I don't hate Green Lantern movies, so that's number 20. Number 19 is another movie that was very much bashed on Rotten Tomatoes by movie critics and stuff. Only about a year and a half ago I saw it for the first time, but I really love the movie. I love the art style, art direction, and design and stuff of the movie. I feel it's a very much underrated movie. Just like I think Green Lantern gets way over hatred, I love this movie. And that is, at number 19, The Spirit. Which, of course, starring main bad guy is, of course, Samuel L. Jackson, which is obviously no stranger to comic book graphic novel movies, given he's in the cinematic universe, plus he was also in The Kingsman as well. But, yeah, he was the main bad guy in The Spirit, and very similar art style to, like, say, movies like Sin City and stuff. A little different art direction, though, than that, but I really love The Spirit. I enjoyed it. I really don't have really anything real major negative to say about the movie, frankly. There are some pacing issues, but for the most part, really well done. And I liked the kind of twisted, messed up character that Samuel L. Jackson played. And it was kind of weird that he wore like a Nazi, like Hitler-style uniform. I thought that was kind of weird and bizarre, to be fair and honest. But I liked it. I don't hate it or anything, and I feel, as I said, I feel it's one of the most underrated comic book movies and one of the most overly hated by critics, because it got a very low ranking on Rotten Tomatoes, but I completely disagree. I loved it. Number 18 is another movie I feel is somewhat maybe a little bit overhated, though to be fair, it actually scored decent with critics, scored like a 60-some% with critics. Surprisingly, it's more actually the fans, I think, that dislike this movie. And yet, as a comic book movie, I guess you could say it's not really that great of a comic book movie, but as a movie overall, and as a drama-style movie, I really love this at number 18, and that is Superman Returns. Yes, I actually really like Superman Returns. It's my number 2 favorite Superman movie, period. And as you saw in Dishonorable Mentions, I don't like Man of Steel. I don't like how they Nolanized Superman. Yeah, that's a phrase I use. I like to say. Nolanizing. Zack Snyder basically ripped off Christopher Nolan's style. That's what they're going for the DC Universe, to try and make themselves different than Marvel MCU. But I love Superman Returns by Bryan Singer. In my eyes, Bryan Singer has not made a bad movie. Some people may say it's a bad movie on his resume, but as I say, as a superhero movie, Superman Returns isn't exactly the best, but as a drama or in general as a movie, it's good, and it really more humanizes, I feel, and it's more about Clark Kent rather than the actual character Superman. And I liked that. I liked that focus more on the person of Clark Kent, and like the person who he was, not the superhero character, but more about the person. Sort of like Iron Man 3 focused more on the person of Tony Stark rather than his alter ego Iron Man. Keep that in mind. And I felt the guy who played Clark Kent Superman tried to channel like his inner Christopher Reeves, which is fine because anybody knows me knows I love Christopher Reeves Superman. I do. Period. And I loved actually who they had as Lex Luthor in the movie. I personally really enjoyed. Yeah, he was kind of cartoony and stuff for the most part, but I don't care. I loved him, and I felt like with his outfit, like the white suit, and like also certain things he did remind me more of the Lex Luthor from Smallville, which the movie came out during Smallville, like season 3 or something, I think, at the time was going on in Smallville when it came out. It was like 2005. But yes, I loved Superman Returns. Sorry, I just really loved it. Coming in at number 17 is Sin City. And I love this movie for the art style. I feel really there's no... Of course, you have like 3 different stories, I guess you could say. Sort of like Sin City, Dame to Kill For, which I have not seen that movie. I'd like... Actually, if I get a chance in the near future, I plan on watching it. Because of how much I loved the original Sin City. Other than the art style and everything, really, I love the acting. I actually thought Bruce Willis did a really good job in Sin City. I very much enjoyed the character. It was nice to see him not phoning it in like he has been in some more recent movies over the last several years. It's been a while now, like almost 10 years since the first Sin City, which is a shame. Really good movie, and and that's one thing I can say about the director. He can really separate himself for the art style of Sin City 2, and The Spirit. All definitive movies for their art direction and art style. And that's one thing I love about Sin City and The Spirit both. I feel that Sin City was also a very much underrated film. It didn't get, luckily, the hatred like, say, The Spirit and others, but it is still a very underrated film. And I feel that more people need to watch Sin City. And if you're watching this and you've never watched Sin City, The Spirit, or any of those, I highly recommend. I definitely recommend Sin City over the others. It's just a really solid overall movie, and it's definitely also a solid R movie. Like The Spirit was also a solid R. But anyways, I'll go to the next. Number 16 is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And overall, though, I didn't really care much, as I've said, I think, before, that I didn't care much for Captain America, the First Avenger, because I felt it was more like a prologue to the First Avengers movie. Now, Winter Soldier is way better than the first one, and to be fair, I liked that it went a little bit more tougher route and stuff, and I loved who they had playing the Winter Soldier character, which is, of course, Bucky. Really good overall movie, solid acting job, and I think, Chris Evans as Captain America, I think kills it at the role. He just does. And I think he gets better every movie he does, frankly. I just love it. And I'm just glad that he has said that as long as Marvel wants him around and stuff, and they feel he does a good job, and the fans want him around, that he'll continue doing Marvel MCU movies, which makes me happy, since we don't know how much longer we'll obviously have Robert Downey Jr., so I'm glad Chris Evans will probably be sticking around for several more years. So that makes me happy. But it's more of a spy thriller overall, Captain America, Winter Soldier. Good movie. If you haven't seen Winter Soldier, one question. Why the hell haven't you seen Winter Soldier? Seriously. Like one of my coworkers at work, it's his favorite MCU movie, period. He just loves those type of movies. But yeah, it's really solid, really well directed, which gives me high hopes for Civil War. I'm going to try my best to keep my hopes for that movie a little more grounded, because in some ways some of my hopes ended up down when I saw Ultron. Age of Ultron, though, had nothing to do with the character Ultron. Coming in at number 15 is another movie. It gets kind of a lot of unwanted hate, very much dislike, and yeah, the special effects haven't aged too well, but for 1997, the effects are really good. And coming at number 15 is the live-action movie done by New Line Cinema, that being Spawn. Now, yeah, some Spawn fans may not like it. Now, for me, I love the Spawn movie. I'm sorry, I just do. I love the character Al Simmons, and I thought the actor they had playing Al Simmons did a really good job at the role, playing the character and playing Spawn. I thought I enjoyed it. I would have preferred seeing him in the mask more of the movie than they showed him without the mask, but keep in mind, even the animated series, which is highly praised by HBO, shows him, for the most part, without the mask thing on, of the ectoplasmic uniform, if you will. And the movie was well done. Now, interesting thing is, nowadays you can only find the director's cut version of the movie, which is rated R. When it was originally released theatrically, it was PG-13, and to be fair, it was a really hard PG-13. It was really pushing the boundary between PG-13 and R, because it was dark and everything way before it was considered cool by the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy. That was a really hard PG-13, close to being a light R. It was very much dark and demonic, if you will. And yes, I personally liked who they had do the voice of Malebolgia, and regardless of what some people may feel, I loved who they casted playing the Violator, which, for the most part, most of the movie is a demonic clown. But I thought he did a great job in the role. And overall, yeah, there was some cheesy lines and cheesy stuff here and there, but you have to expect that for, like, the late 90s. But for the most part, it was a very underrated movie. And I thought, and of course, I'm maybe a minority who think that the live-action Spawn movie was good, but oh well. I don't care if I'm part of the minority on that. I love it, and it gets number 15 without a doubt. Number 14 is a movie that actually is pretty highly praised, surprisingly, of like late 90s movies, and that is The Crow. Very deserving on the rank it made it to. It's a really solid, well-acted, well-directed movie. Honestly, I can't think of any real flaws in the movie. Very, very dark. Hard R, most definitely. One of the most hard R graphic novel movies, period, out there. Because of the scenes it's showing, like, this guy getting killed by this gang, who kills him and kills and rapes his girlfriend. And of course, he comes back to life as what they call the Crow, of course, to become a spirit, I guess you could say, of like vengeance, if you will. And it shows him, he is definitely an anti-hero, if you will, because he kills these bad guys. He won't hesitate to kill them, sort of like Spawn didn't hesitate to kill. So, but yeah, it was basically for vengeance. Like also characters like Ghost Rider, which of course would kill as well. But Crow, amazing movie, and has aged actually very well, surprisingly. A lot of the early, like, 90s graphic novel, comic book movies didn't age well, like the special effects, of course, Spawn. But keep in mind that Crow relied more on not special effects, but relied more on practical effects, which is why it's aged better, I think. And the acting was well done, as I said. Music I really enjoyed. And it's just one of those movies I think has really become a true cult classic. The definition of cult classic. Probably one of the best, frankly, comic book movies of all time. Maybe somewhat underrated, because it's not part of the hipster culture, which I don't care. But I love The Crow. I can't say anything negative at all about the movie. I have nothing bad to say. And all I can say is, if you haven't seen The Crow, I highly recommend you watch The Crow. Seriously, go out, watch it. Coming in at number 13 is the first of the two Hellboy movies. Based on, of course, the graphic novel Hellboy, obviously. Of course, I had honorable mentions the sequel, Golden Army, which was very well directed and was done by, of course, the director of Pan's Labyrinth, which is another really good movie. Now, the Hellboy movie, PG-13, and did push the boundaries of PG-13's early millennia, like 2003 or so when it came out. So comic book movies were still not quite reached the peak. It was, of a third-party type comic book movie, it was definitely one of the most successful at the box office, because it made like $300 million or some, and that was a rarity for being early still before they really reached their peak at box office. But yeah, it really pushed some of the boundaries and stuff, and to be fair, it was very loyal to the graphic novel. Probably one of the most loyal to source material of any comic book / graphic novel movie there has been. Hellboy also has, surprisingly, the special effects have aged reasonably well for it, which is interesting given the movie is like 12 years old now, 12, 13 years old, time frame wise. But yeah, very well done. Overall, special effects were top-notch. The villain was solid and well done. And you don't always have that outside, say, like DC tends to have some of the better villains, like MCU hasn't, but Hellboy 1 and 2 both have had really good villains. So, I give them points for that, and I hope eventually they succeed in getting a Hellboy 3. I know the actor Ron, which played Hellboy, I know he's really been pushing for a long time now for that. And I hope eventually we get a Hellboy 3 while he can still do the role. Just like I hope eventually we get a new Spawn movie. Coming in at number 12 is probably the least popular of the Nolan Batman trilogy, and that is The Dark Knight Rises. And yes, a lot of people say blaspheme and stuff because I put Dark Knight on honorable mentions and not in the top 20 list. As I've said, this is my personal picks, and I wasn't the biggest fan of The Dark Knight. I felt it was kind of overrated. Very much so. And just like I feel Heath Ledger's kind of overrated. I loved the Jack Nicholson Joker, but my favorite of all time is Mark Hamill's animated Joker from the 90s. And, yeah, I love The Dark Knight Rises. I love the guy who played Bane. I loved the character Bane, though. In the end, we find out he's not really the real one pulling the strings. We find out it's the daughter of Ra's al Ghul. And, which is pretty decent. And I loved who they had actually playing Catwoman. I liked this version of Catwoman more than the in Heat version of Catwoman from Tim Burton's Batman Returns. Well, it's a good movie, yes, but I didn't really care much for that version of Catwoman. I like this version of Catwoman better. Of course, we see also a guy who would probably end up becoming, say, Robin, but I love the movie. Yeah, there's a lot of major plot holes. I'll be fair, it has its major flaws in the movie, but I loved Bane. And I loved overall how things were done. I loved how there was so much, like, revolving around the character of Jeff Gordon. Commissioner Gordon. I just loved the character of Commissioner Gordon. But that's number 12. Number 11 is Superman 2, which is, I feel, the best Superman movie ever done. Without a doubt. Best Christopher Reeve Superman. Now, the main thing I didn't like about the Christopher Reeve Superman movies was I did not like Lex. But luckily, this movie did not revolve around Lex Luthor, obviously. It revolved around the escaping of General Zod. Which I loved this cheesy version of Zod more than the new Zod. Though he was probably the only good thing about Man of Steel was Zod. Well, and the one who played Jor-El. But anyways, I digress. But I really loved Superman 2. As I said, really cheesy, but it's a good cheese fest movie. And of course, at the time, Superman was giving up his power so he could be with Lois Lane. Because, how shall I put this? A line from a female comedian in I Love the 80s Strikes Back. He had to deflate to a normal man in order to inflate for Lois Lane. I thought that was kind of hilarious and funny. But, yep, more or less, that's the gist of it. But, good movie overall. And I recommend you, if you've never watched any of the older Superman movies, I recommend Superman 2 over all the others. But I also recommend the original Superman, obviously, from the late 70s. Number 10 is Marvel's The Avengers. And yes, this is in my top 4 favorite cinematic universe movies, but makes it number 10 overall comic book movies. I love the movie, and I love Loki, though I feel Loki has become very overrated in the cinematic universe, just like I felt certain other villains are kind of underrated. But keep in mind, that's just my opinion. But I loved getting to see the glimpse, of course, at the end of the movie, the mid-credit scene with Thanos being introduced officially. And I'm looking forward to Thanos in the Infinity, obviously, War of Avengers. But, anyways, number 10 is Avengers. Number 9 is Ant-Man, the newest movie on this list. And yeah, it's already made it to number 9. That's pretty high rank for a new movie. But it was very well acted, very well directed, and as I've said before on my Cinematic Universe Top 12 list, I loved Michael Douglas. I thought he stole the movie. But I also very much loved the villain. He was sort of like a Lex Luthor villain in character. And I just enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of Ant-Man. And I'm looking forward to see the new Wasp. Obviously, we got to see that mid-credits scene. And, of course, the final ending credits scene where Thanos is putting on the gauntlet, obviously, and saying, I guess I'll have to do things myself. So I'm looking forward. And, yeah. Number 8 is, from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the original Thor movie. And as I've said before, I love Thor. It's one of my top 3 favorite standalone films. Thor. Yeah. But I love it. And it's interesting, it's more a Shakespearean style person who ended up doing the movie. So that kind of helped. And overall, I loved also again to see the return to screen, though I didn't feel she was a really solid character, but I loved the actress who played, of course. The one who would become the love interest of Thor, obviously, being played by, darn it, I forget her name now. I shouldn't, but she was one of my favorite things about the prequels, Star Wars prequels, which played Amidala. Sorry, I just love her. But anyways, coming in at number 7 is the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie from 2002. And yes, I love the original Spider-Man. For the longest time, it was my favorite Spider-Man movie. It got dethroned as my number 1, dropped to number 2 by the one that's higher on this list. But yes, as I've said before, as the character Peter Parker, I loved Tobey Maguire, but I didn't feel he played the best Spider-Man. He wasn't as good at the Spider-Man style sarcasm and stuff. But he did play somewhat better in the nerd, I guess you could say, area. And I loved Green Goblin in that movie. That's what really did for me. But my absolute favorite thing from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, my absolute favorite thing, believe it or not, is not Spider-Man and it's not one of the villains. It's J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. JJ. which of course played the creator, obviously, in the Portal game. Like, you know, the whole lemon thing, which I love to death in Portal 2. But I love J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Love him. He always steals. Every moment he's in the movie, he steals the spotlight. I can't stop laughing whenever I see him. And I really hope, and he has even said that he wouldn't mind coming back playing the character JJ with Sony and the new Spider-Man series, and also possibly appear maybe in a cameo or something as J. Jonah Jameson in the cinematic universe. Now, I would love that. I would love to see him come back as J. Jonah Jameson. I just would. Coming in at number 6. My favorite of the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, Batman Begins. Very deserving of number 6 spot. Why? Because I love Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul. He was incredible in every scene he was in the movie. I just loved him. He does such a good job as a teacher. I mean, I liked him as Qui-Gon Jinn in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Love him in The Taken. I loved him doing the voice of Aslan in the newer Chronicles of Narnia movies. I just love Liam Neeson in almost everything he does. I've enjoyed him in. And yeah, he's absolutely one of my favorite actors, without a doubt, of all time. Just like I loved him in movies like Schindler's List. But yes, in Batman Begins, awesome. Just like Christian Bale did an incredible job playing that multi-layered role. Now, I have a few problems here and there. One of the most fun things I think about Batman Begins was that adorable kid, you know, we got to meet in the movie. Interesting enough, he'd become one of the most hated characters ever in fiction. Joffrey in Game of Thrones. It's interesting how he could go from such a cute, adorable character in Batman Begins to one of the most despised characters in history. Well, maybe second most despised. Number 1 is probably Jar Jar Binks. Yeah. But anywho, very deserving. Number 5 is a very hard R movie. Probably my favorite R-rated comic book movie. Of course, anti-hero character, and part of a trilogy by New Line Cinema. Coming in number 5 is the original Blade. Played by, of course, Wesley Snipes. And Wesley Snipes killed it as Blade. And I love also the character, villain, that emerged, Frost. Loved. And he became like the blood god at the end. That fight scene with him and Wesley Snipes, oh my word. Loved it. Such awesome fight scenes in Blade 1. It's insane. It came out like 98, and that movie has aged rather well. But keep in mind, there's not a lot of special effects, just like with The Crow. Rely more on practical effects, which is why I think Blade has aged so well. Just like The Crow. Personally, I hope they never reboot The Crow. And I hope it's true what they've been saying possibly about Wesley Snipes coming back as Blade, but being more of a mentor figure now, possibly maybe like to Blade's daughter. Which would be an interesting idea. Though it's kind of hard picturing a Wesley Snipes Blade not being like a rated R. Because, let's face it, all 3 Blade movies were good. Blade 2 was really good. Blade 3 Trinity, yeah, it had its flaws, but it was still a good movie for the most part. And interesting enough, it had Ryan Reynolds in Blade Trinity. Plus, of course, it's going to be Deadpool. So it's interesting. Ryan Reynolds is no stranger to comic book movies, obviously. He's been doing for a long time. But, yeah. I highly recommend you check out the original Blade if you haven't. Really good, well done, and the role of Blade was made for Wesley Snipes, like Tony Stark character was made for Robert Downey Jr. There are just certain roles that are made for certain individuals. Coming in at number 4 is the original Iron Man, which is my number 2 favorite Cinematic Universe standalone film. Was number 1 favorite. But yes, coming in number 4 without a doubt is Iron Man original. Love it to death. And I love the guy who was going to become War Machine. I prefer him than the guy they ended up getting to come in for the second and third movie and into the Cinematic Universe. I just didn't care as much. I mean, he's not bad, don't get me wrong, as War Machine. I like him, but I just like the guy who played the character prior to him in the first movie. And, of course, we see a lot of sides, and we get to see, like, the origin story and stuff of Tony Stark becoming the Iron Man character. And, of course, the main villain is sort of like a mentor figure to him, a big corporate, of course, jerk. Sort of like an Ant-Man. Similar, a corporate guy. So that's interesting. But, yeah, overall I like it, and getting to see the evolution of Iron Man character, and the movie was really solid, and given it was done like 2008, 2007, really good movie. And really, it's what truly started the Cinematic Universe. And at the end, you had that credit scene with Nick Fury. Samuel L. Jackson is coming in as Nick Fury. And that's when the seeds were laid towards what would become, of course, Avengers and everything in the Cinematic Universe. Coming in at number 3 is the first of the 2 rebooted Amazing Spider-Man movies. Number 3, The Amazing Spider-Man, with, of course, the character Connors as the Lizard. Love to death this movie. As much as I loved the 2002 Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, which I do, but this one was much more loyal to source material. Like, for instance, the web thing. They made it stupid natural webbing and stuff, which actually was a Sam Raimi thing. That was actually an idea from James Cameron, believe it or not. But they brought back the classic web shooter cartridges and stuff into this movie, and as the felt more like, though, Andrew Garfield felt more like a hipster nerd rather than a traditional nerd like, Tobey Maguire's version. I thought Tobey Maguire played better Peter Parker, as I've said, but as the actual character, alter ego Spider-Man, oh my word, Andrew Garfield killed it as Spider-Man. I loved him in the role. Andrew Garfield was made to play the character of Spider-Man. He just defined that role. The new kid that's going to be playing Spider-Man now, he's got a lot to live up to as the Spider-Man character, because, let's face it, Andrew Garfield really set the standard really high. And for people who may hate Amazing Spider-Man 2, was still pretty loyal to source material, keep in mind, because of killing off Gwen Stacy, loyal to comic. And that's another thing I'll say about Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. The thing I really hated about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies was, oh my word, I hated Mary Jane. The woman who played Mary Jane. I found her so annoying. I did. I loved, though, who they had playing Gwen Stacy. I mean, the chemistry between Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker was just perfection. Probably the best, I think, on-screen relationship I've ever seen in a superhero movie. If I had to say any other relationship I really loved outside of those two, was probably Pepper and Tony relationship. I thought there was good chemistry between them, but oh my word, Andrew Garfield, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and Gwen Stacy, they are, as far as I'm concerned, the best on-screen couple ever in a superhero movie. There's no challenge. There is no other couple that even comes close, except for Tony and Pepper. Sorry, just isn't. And I can't help it. But anyways, coming in at number 2 is X-Men Days of Future Past, which was, of course, the return to the X-Men franchise, and that being, obviously, done by Bryan Singer, which kind of felt like a cross, like a dark future and stuff of like Terminator, but also like the prison things kind of reminded me of like a Tron Legacy. Interesting. But really good overall. The acting, having both the original cast and the new cast both together, incredible. The special effects were superb. It's insane how highly rated it was by critics. I mean, it got such an incredible critical acclaim. It scored over a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Only, I think, maybe 2 or 3 superhero comic book movies have ever scored that high. It, and another one that I'm going to be mentioning at number 1, which is actually a tie, interestingly enough. But, yes, X-Men Days of Future Past, incredible movie, as always. Hugh Jackman kills it as Wolverine. He's been doing the role for 17 years now, I think. 16, 17 years, yeah. He could basically do it in his sleep, and he still looks jacked. It's hard to believe he's in, like, his 40s, like, early 50s. It's insane. I mean, he looks ripped as can be. And the acting, the effects, I mean, everything is solid. And as a second movie, Jennifer Lawrence kills it as Raven Mystique. I just love, I didn't care much about the Mystique in the older X-Men movies, but in these, I loved her as Mystique. It's insane how much I loved it. Now, here it is, tied for number 1. X-Men First Class. I just love this movie to death. And I think the ones who really stole the movie, though, for me, of performances was Jennifer Lawrence introduced me the first time as her version of Raven Mystique, and Michael Fassbender as Magneto. It's incredible, the job he does. And that whole bar scene with those former ex-Nazis where he's trying to get revenge on the people who killed his parents because, you know, he was a Jew and stuff in the Holocaust and everything. And coming after the villain, which I actually enjoyed the main villain of the movie, played by Kevin Bacon, of all people. I loved him in the movie. I thought he did a great job, which had this ability to, like, absorb, explode, like, atom and stuff, like, of nuclear bombs and stuff. He wanted to create a nuclear holocaust globally, and he basically rise up and also cause this reaction to kill all the normal humans, and strictly the super race, like the mutants, if you will, would rise up. And of course, interestingly enough, later on, Magneto would replace him as that guy in that role. And of course would take his helmet and make it Magneto's to block Xavier from being able to read his mind stuff. But they put together this like team, and we also introduced for the first time the characters that become like Beast. And I love the young Xavier in the movie. You know, we see how he becomes in the wheelchair and stuff. They changed some of the origins, and yeah, it wasn't done by, obviously, Bryan Singer. But Bryan Singer, I think, was executive producer on the movie or something, if I remember correctly. But the guy in the movie that directed that movie was executive producer in Days of Future Past. So, which is why we might keep a lot of the feel of First Class. And yeah, I love this movie to death. Every time I watch it, I love it more. It's just such a superb movie. Not just a comic book or superhero movie, but in general as a movie overall. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. That's how much I love this movie. Now, tied with it for number 1 is my favorite standalone movie, my favorite cinematic universe movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, which I've seen now 13 times, 14 times, somewhere around that. It's insane how many times I've seen the movie. But I've seen, like, X-Men First Class, like, 10 or 11 times. So I've seen both almost equally as many times. And yeah, I love this movie to death. Another one of my favorite movies of all time. I can't tell you how much I love Guardians of the Galaxy. It's insane how much I love this movie. I love all the characters, but oh my word, the character Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt, I just love to death. And they did a good job on his origin story. And I loved who they had playing, of course, the adopted daughter of the Mad Titan Thanos, Gamora. Incredible. And I also kind of liked who they had playing Nebula, which was known for being, probably becoming one of the most well-known ever, trying to think the term, companion of the Doctor in 2.5 of the 3 seasons of the Matt Smith years as Amy Pond. Enjoyed her. But, oh my word, I love to death Rocket Raccoon, and I loved also Van Diesel as Groot. Just 3 lines and saying different terms and stuff. I am Groot. But it's such an emotional character you really get into. And this is probably the best character I think Van Diesel has done since the Iron Giant. Frankly. I just do. This, without a doubt, if I had to like rank my favorite movies of all time, yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy and X-Men First Class are in my favorite movies of all time. There's no arguing, but these are definitely my top 2 my absolute favorite type are number 1. I just can't say enough how much I love both movies. This is the reason why I have confidence in 20th Century Fox continuing to do the X-Men franchise. And I really hope Deadpool ends up well. And this is why I love the cinematic universe, because of movies like this and why I'm stoked. But it's probably my favorite soundtrack ever of any comic book and one of my 5 favorite soundtracks, movie-wise, of all time. But anyways, I'll get ready to cut this up because, dang, I'm like 47 minutes. As always, this is Goku-san DBZ. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave a comment below. Give me ideas for future lists. And, of course, you can follow me at twitter.com/GokuSunDBZ. Please leave a comment. Please subscribe. Share the video if you enjoyed this. Tell me what are some of your favorite comic book movies of all time. And see you all next week. Peace out.